welcome to Emily Kate Made This. I am Emily Kate and I'm coming to you from Berlin in Germany. It has been a while. I visited the UK for a couple of weeks during May and yeah, didn't bring my camera, didn't record. So here we are. If you are new to this channel, then it's typically a knitting podcast, sewing, general crafty things, and I've recently been more into vintage knitting. So if you are into vintage, welcome. And if you're not into vintage, welcome anyway. That good old awkward introduction, isn't it great? So let us get to it. I have a few things to show you today. It's kind of heavy acquisition-y because I bought some really cool things in some charity shops and some antique shops in England. But I also have one finished object and one work in progress. I don't have any sewing this time. I've only knitted like 4 times in the last 4 weeks, so this will not be a finished object heavy episode by any means, but hopefully it's still of interest to you. So let's get to it. First things first, you may recognize, and please no judgment on my terrible seaming of poofy sleeves. Even just looking at it's frustrating. The first finished object and the only finished object of today is my original blue chevron jumper. This is a 1940s pattern. I started it, I was supposed to look this up, I started it in August? I was gonna get my phone, but even then, I don't know how I'll find it. Ravelry. I'm not sure. Potentially September. I potentially started this in September. And I did the first panel, and I was all very excited about it, and I showed you all. Then my mum visited and went, well, that's gonna be too small. So we held it up against me and realized it is definitely very small. So I discarded it, I put it aside, started a new one. You've all seen that drama if you've been here a while. It's the green version, which I then changed into a vest because it came out far too big, like enormously too big. So then after that, I finished my my rainbow jumper. And when I had finished it, I measured the front panel up against it and realized it would actually fit. So I went through all of that for absolutely no reason. I could have just continued knitting this jumper as I had originally done in September. But alas, I have now finished. There is one problem, that is that I did check my gauge and I figured it would fit, and I did my sleeves and they are so tight. It's really, really frustrating. I've blocked them twice. They physically fit and they're not like actively stopping blood flow, but they're very tight. And I'm wondering how it's possible to get them to stretch out more, and I'm not sure if it's possible. Maybe I'm not a very aggressive blocker. Maybe if I had someone who was super good at aggressively blocking things, they would manage it for me. So I will give it another go to stretch them out a bit. I was thinking maybe I could shove some like newspaper into the arms or something when I was blocking them and see if that would like make them bigger, because they're very tight. I have got a humblebee shawl blocking on the floor and a plant to this side, so getting up is kind of difficult, but let's try. And a basket of knitting behind me again. Very, very tight and right in there. this could have done with being a little bit bigger. I think it's not like the perfect fit, but alas, it's better than not fitting at all. Scotch. So the pattern I did almost exactly, except when it got to the sleeves, I didn't want the box, not pleat, the box shape that's originally with this pattern, because I don't think it particularly suits me very well. And when I was doing the sleeve, the gauge was already off because I used much smaller needles, and I have bored you all to tears talking about the gauge issue with this jumper, so I won't go into more. But basically, I adjusted this jumper by taking out what I thought was one chevron repeat on each side, but I actually took out 2 chevron repeats, so on each side, so that was 4, so of course it actually came out too small. It would actually be a more comfortable fit if I had taken out 1 on each side, but alas, I did not. And I based all my gauge calculations for the sleeve on that, and 1 extra repeat would have been perfect. But hey ho, when I was knitting it, the row gauge was completely off because my yarn is a sport weight. It's Drops Nord, and it's a sport weight yarn, so not the same at all as the original. And the needles for the original I think was 3.75, and I used 2.75 for the whole jumper, except for the ribbing, which was 2.25, because I'm insane. And so when I was knitting, I got to this section, the white section, and the sleeve was finished about here, and it looked very bizarre. And I just decided, that's enough stress, let's not do that. And I used Squidney Knits. She has a vintage, what is it? I say this every time, Squidney's School of Vintage Knitting on Patreon. She has a beautiful jumper called the Home Front Jumper, which I love, and I used that pattern for the sleeves to get the calculations that I needed. And yeah, obviously my calculations were not perfect, otherwise this would have fit better, but hey ho. I have started another couple of jumpers using the home front as a recipe, I suppose you'd say. So let's hope they come out better, because I did not change anything else. I just did the sleeves, the poofy sleeves. But setting them in is really hard. Squidney does have a video on how to do it, and I did follow it, but I don't know, it's very different when you're looking at a video and then you've got your own knitting in front of you and a needle and thread and you're trying to do it. It just doesn't look exactly the same as on the the video. This one I think went better than this one, but I did a totally idiotic thing, and I did this one first. The poof wasn't very big, and I thought that there was the seam thread going through, and I cut it, thinking that I could undo it and redo the poofy part, because I'd seamed everything with one piece of yarn. I didn't want to cut it at the bottom and I have to undo everything just for this section. But I didn't cut the seaming thread, I cut the actual jumper. So hopefully there's no like glaringly obvious hole where it's coming apart, and I will keep my eye on it. I cut it really short in the middle, like just a whoop. So I couldn't weave in the ends exactly, but I did use a crochet hook and I tried to save it. We'll see with what happens, but that was really stupid. I was in a really, I was frustrated because I couldn't get them right. I'd redone it like 3 times. Obviously, when that happens, you should not get scissors when you're annoyed and go near your knitting, because silly things will happen. Ho hum, we have a finished object. It's very warm. I've shut all the windows so nobody can hear me outside, and I am, yeah, pretty hot, but we're gonna keep going. On the subject of being very warm, this is a superwash jumper, superwash yarn, I'm pretty sure. Should probably look at the label, but I wash them all by hand anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, I have been wearing my rainbow jumper since I finished it. I wore it around Sweden and I wore it around England. And my armpits have completely felted in that jumper, which is a little bit annoying because it does look a bit odd, but I suppose nobody's really going to get up close and personal and look at it. But I suppose I hadn't really considered that wearing vintage knits that are very close fitting would get in quite intense contact with your armpits and therefore felt. So that's some fun to get used to. You can't really have oversized vintage, it doesn't work. But anyway, that was a random tangent. Do I have anything else to say? I did change the stitch count for this part because I'd taken out 32 stitches on each side, which is insane. Oh, Emily. Anyway, so this had to be adjusted, but I don't really know what I did, but I do think I should have made it a bit bigger. But that's fine, because the next time I am not going to adjust it and take out 32 stitches. Anything else? I think that's everything. You've already heard about it with the green one, and now you've heard it again. Let's go on to works in progress. So, we're not really venturing too far from the world of Chevron. If you recall, I made the sleeves first for the green version. I'll try and put a picture somewhere. I made a green version of this jumper and I started with the sleeves, knitted them flat. Don't know why I didn't look at them and think, they're enormous, I should stop now. I just looked at them and thought, they're enormous, I'll just make the body now. And then obviously the body came out too big, the sleeves were enormous. Then I decided I would I'd frog the sleeves and start again. But then when I was frogging, I had a moment. I might insert some footage where I was talking about it, maybe. Hello everyone! If you remember, recently I finished a Chevron jumper from the 1940s and it came out incredibly huge. So today is all about the frogging. Not looking forward to it. Basically, I'm only frogging the arms for now. I did have the body, but I turned it into a vest. And I'm still humming and hawing about whether I want to keep it as a vest or if it is just too big. The main issue I have is I don't have anything to wear under it because I don't have any shirts. So I might get some shirts, and then if it looks good, I'll keep it. Otherwise, it could be a good under layer, like a vest, to then layer up with jumpers in the winter. And if it really never gets worn, then it will be frogged. But I have enough yarn to make the right size. So for today, we are frogging the arms. As you can see, they are enormous. This is like the actual size of my torso. I did think about turning them into a jumper, but I don't know, they're a little bit too short, squat. I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. But now I look at it, I'm like, maybe. I don't know. Now I'm having second thoughts. I'll come back to you on that one. But I suddenly thought, why do I have to make the chevron like this wide? Because these are shorter. Why don't I just double? I'll show you, then it'll make more sense. So I didn't get very far on frogging the sleeves. I took out the whole of this part and one of these, which was separating it there. And I'm now going to repeat these two and have it as the body of a new chevron jumper. Because yes, this is a sleeve and it fits my entire body. So didn't see the point in ripping out all of it so that I would recast it on and make it exactly the same size, but just slightly higher chevron patterns. So I'm going with a difference, a change. And I think it's going to be very nice. So we're going to get that again here. And then this part, I'm going to use the green and make this, and I will follow the Squidney's home front jumper pattern for that. Once I've separated the sleeves, then I will be following her pattern. So I'm quite excited about this. Then I have already got the sleeves cast on. I'm sitting on my yarn ball. Oh, goodness me. There's the back or front, who knows. Oh my goodness, I'm just dropping it all over the floor. They're all completely entangled, so let's just go with that. So I've got the front and the back, and I am using a 3.25 for my purl side and a 3.5 for my knit side, so that I don't get rowing out. And then, yeah, I don't have anything else to say. This is Yarn Home Lithuanian yarn, and I will link to it below, as well as everything else that I talk about, and we shall see what happens with this new knit. I've got stuff everywhere, so I have to walk to the opposite side of the room to pick up everything that I want to show you. And I have to stand over a huge shawl right in the middle of the floor. I just wanted to quickly show you the sleeves, this part. My mum lovingly knitted these for me. Really hoping these ones are a lot bigger than this. Oh, I suppose we'll find that out. So there we go. These are the leftover bits of yarn from my the original jumper, and I think there'll be plenty. So no need to panic. And then there's not really much to show, and I'm not 100% sure when you will see the rest of this, but I figured I'd show you anyway. This is the beginnings of a new vintage jumper. Shocking, I know, more vintage knitting. It looks very small, but my mum knitted this for me, and we have attempted lots of calculations based off of this one and the green one to make sure it doesn't come out too small or too big. So I'm going to try this on later just to make sure it does go around my waist. But this is the welt of the next jumper. I've done the increased row, and it's a little bit different to my usual knitting patterns where you increase straight away after the ribbing or the welt and then do the whole pattern at that set number. So for example, it was 200 stitches that you increase to, the rest of the jumper would be 200 all the way around. But this next pattern increases gradually, so I think it's going to do more of this shape. So I'm excited to try something new there. Also a bit nervous because, again, I'm playing with gauge, because again, this is sport weight yarn. This is the leftovers of this jumper, and I am desperately trying to use all this yarn. I got this yarn when I first started knitting in 2020, and I made my ranunculus. It's a light blue jumper with silk mohair. Then I've made this one, and now I'm going to make this one. I will not have enough of the blue. I'll need one more skein. I do have some more white, and I need some red because I haven't even named the jumper. It's the Victory jumper. It is a pattern that you will find on the Victoria and Albert Museum website. It's a free pattern, and it is to celebrate the end of World War II. And I've got yarn balls everywhere. So that is my next cast on, and I'm very excited for that one. So technically it's already casted on, and my mum was going to do the sleeves like these again, but I figured I'd just double check that the gauge is correct before we do that again. So that is all of my knitting, and I don't have any sewing. I am wearing something that I sewed, but you can't see it, but it is the peppermint pocket skirt, and it has dinosaurs all over it because dinosaurs are everything. Not exactly vintage, but who cares? Let's go on to some acquisitions. I got some very cool things. I got some more vintage patterns. I'm going to insert a video if these don't focus on the camera, but I was so excited. One of my main goals was to find vintage knitting patterns in the charity shops or thrift stores or secondhand stores or op shops that are in the UK, and I went to a lot. I went to 10 different towns and went to at least 5 in each of those, but some of them more. Like Brighton, I went to multiple shops. I finally found some vintage knitting patterns in real life. I obviously have access to ones that are online, and most of them are free. Some of them I did buy, but there's something very unique about finding one in person. This one I'm very excited about because it mentions coupons, which means this one was around during World War II. And it excites me greatly. It's not even that the pattern is particularly fantastic, but the fact that someone had to use their coupons to buy this for some reason makes me, I don't know, happy? I'm not really happy about the war, but you know what I mean. It's just a fun find. Then I found this one, which is, I believe it's called Fern and Feather, or Fan and Feather. So that was exciting. And this one is a bonus because it comes with a cardigan and a jumper pattern. Or technically a bolero pattern. So that was exciting. Then on the theme of vintage, I got some vintage sewing patterns. Technically they're vintage, but I'm pretty certain they are modernized, updated versions based off of the original vintage. But yeah, they stay vintage on them. That's a Simplicity S9635, and it's pajama pattern. And I thought it would be fun to have some vintage trouser pattern. A vintage trouser pattern and a vintage blouse shirt pattern. And I can make them pajamas or just casual around the house clothes. Then I got they have a very specific name and I can't remember. It's like home front overalls, or yeah, let's go with that. That's S8447. They're all 1940s. And this one's a 1940s top slash blouse t-shirt style pattern. So I'm very excited to give these a whirl because I'm getting my vintage knitting items built up, but I don't have any vintage sewing projects, so that's gonna happen. I'm really distracted because my neighbour is right there at my window and is looking up thinking, why is she talking to the camera? And I also bought these two. They were just in an antique store. They're not particularly antique, they're probably 1990s or early 2000s, but I thought they were nice. And I also got some buttons, but I'm gonna put the video here because that was very exciting. There's nowhere that I have found here in Germany that I can find vintage buttons. And people always talk about them and how they just casually find them in charity shops, and I never have access to charity shops, but now I have, so I went wild and I found multiple buttons for all of my future vintage knits. Don't think I have any that are the right colour for the two that I'm knitting now, but that's irrelevant. I will find those another time. What else? I feel like I'm rushing through this, but I'm also, I don't want to bore people talking about what I bought, but equally sometimes it's exciting. I don't know, it's very hit and miss. Sometimes it's nice to watch what other people get, and other times it's like, that's nice. I should also mention what I'm wearing. The earrings are adorable. These are by Chapel View Crafts and they are baked beans. I'll see if I can get a better shot here. Don't know. So I got the earrings and I also got some stitch markers. There's a little crumpet, with butter and some baked beans because they're so cute and very British. I did get a bunch of other bits and pieces, but I won't show you. They are just bits, patterns, and I'll show you as I'm knitting them, I think. And I briefly wanted to touch on something really cute that some of you might like. My grandparents used to have a doll's house, and it was a doll's house that was really for adults, and I was never allowed really to play with it because it had small parts. And then it was supposed to come to me when my grandparents died, but I now live in Germany, so I can't actually get it over here. But I did take some little things that meant a lot to me, and I thought I'd just show a little clip of them because they're so cute. My nan is still alive, but my granddad just died in March. He was 97, and my nan is now in a care home, and so she is no longer keeping all of her things. She's selling them and then going to sell the house, and so these are little things that remind me of them, and they're really sweet. I think I will wrap it up there. I will add some footage of my UK adventures at the end here if you are interested, and yeah. Other than that, I really don't have any more knitting to show you or any sewing, so I've showed you all the things I purchased. I didn't buy any yarn, by the way. I know, isn't this amazing? I didn't buy any yarn when I was in England or during the whole of May. I'm so proud of myself. And this was 190 grams. All that work, 190 grams that comes out of my stash. I have absolutely no idea where I was with my stash down. I've got some vague numbers, but I'm not really sure if that was for March or for April. That's just in front of me there. So I will, I suppose, when I finish something the next time, do another recalculation. I'm not exactly flying through my stash, but I'm going through step by step. Having vintage knitting projects as my main thing means very tiny needles and quite long lasting projects, so it doesn't really fly particularly. So I will stop rambling now and we'll go take this off so that I can have like fresh air to my body, and I will see you all next time. Bye!